Hello, I'm Jeff Blubaugh, Sedgwick County Commission, District 2. I'm here with Commissioner Stephanie Wise from District 3, and we're here to discuss K-42 today. You know, we both noticed there's been a real uptick in accidents and traffic concerns and stuff. What are you hearing from constituents about K-42?
Well, I get quite a bit of response on K-42 and just the increase of traffic with traffic flow going usually over the speed limit and just safety of pulling out. A lot of concern right now with back to school traffic coming really quickly.
So that is one of my concerns is while we live in Southwest Wichita, two of my children will be going to Clearwater this year, so they'll be crossing K-42 both ways. And one thing I think about K-42, I drive K-42 quite a bit myself, and when you think about the direction of the sun, you know, if you're coming from that direction and coming in, you know, that sun can blind you. You get that fall sun in there, and I know we've had accidents in the past there. I think a lot of the accidents I've heard and seen about are, you know, you have a lot of semis on there, and people, it's hard to pass on K-42, and people will pass several
Vehicles
cars
at a
once.
time.
Yep, so it's definitely dangerous. And
Yeah, you're not wrong on the sun. Usually people are driving into Wichita for work and then back out to their rural areas for their home, and you know that is looking into the sun both ways, and that makes it very difficult, especially when you are maybe in a hurry and decide to pass and do that, you know, several vehicles at a time.
Well, Commissioner Wise and I have asked Branden Stitt from the Sheriff's Department to come out here, kind of share some crash statistics and let us know what you're seeing out there.
Well, guys, so as you know, Commissioner Blubaugh, I grew up southwest of here, so K-42 was the way I came to Wichita ever since I was a little kid, and you can definitely tell that urban sprawl has caused that corridor to be much busier than it was, you know, whenever I was younger, and we are seeing an increase in crashes that are most of the time, at least the recent data that I've pulled, were as a result of people not paying attention and pulling out in front of vehicles, or they're not yielding at stoplights or the stop signs properly. And when I go into some of these statistics, I want to make sure everyone understands that it doesn't necessarily mean that one of the people aren't stopping, but they are stopping and then either they're not looking again, like they've taught you in driver's ed, but and so their judgment is off. And so they pull out in front of somebody and they don't mean to do it. So some of the crash statistics that I want to give you guys, at least for this year, and this is to about mid-July, the Sheriff's Office ourselves have investigated 31 crashes along K-42, and 15 of those crashes were as a direct result, like I've said, of fail to yield the right-of-way. And we typically pick up at about Hoover and go all the way to Sumner County line, which is 119th Street South. And of those 31, we've had one fatality. And of course, one fatality is too many. And we have contributed that specific crash to a failure to yield. And we do have deer in that area. And so there are a lot of deer crashes that you know that we need to be aware of. Some of the other data that I wanted to share to kind of give a broader view of, you know, the jurisdiction of K-42 goes into Wichita, the Sheriff's Office, and also the Highway Patrol. So the Highway Patrol's also worked several crashes. So the total number of crashes that we have, and this is the unofficial data from the Kansas Department of Transportation that tracks that information, we've had 42 crashes along K-42 within the county area. That doesn't include the city of Wichita. And so to give you somewhat of a comparison from 2024, and of course this was all of 2024, we had 65 total crashes with one fatality and 14 injuries and 48 non-injury crashes along K-42 in 2024. So we are on track to you know, go past that this year. So there's a lot of factors that come into play on these crashes, and most of them, as I've said, were intersection related for failure to yield. But there are other things. People, you know, distracted driving is a big factor these days. Everyone has their phone, and no one can seem to put the phone down and just drive. And so we really want to push the distracted driving thing to say we've got to pay attention. When you're driving, you need to be doing just that, drive.
What are some other tips that we could share with people that, you know, if we can train them to put the phone down and have their eyes on the road, but what are some other things that maybe we're not thinking of as drivers, but that you experience through the sheriff's office?
So one of the things then, if we've gone through driver's ed, we know you look left, you look right, you look left again,
Yeah.
and people are forgetting that when they get to an intersection. And you have to know that when you are stopped, let's say give 135th as an example, you're at a complete stop, and the speed through there are highway speeds.
Yeah.
So you may not judge the speed of the vehicle
Correct.
that's approaching. And so either A, you're missing that vehicle that you may have looked right and then didn't look back left again. And then you're also not judging the speed of that vehicle properly, and you pull out in front of them. You don't mean to. It's not an intentional act that you're doing it on purpose, but it is something that can be prevented. And this has been talked about with other commission for several years and other intersections within the county. But so looking again is number one. Put the phone down, avoid distracted driving. And it doesn't just necessarily have to be a phone that causes distraction. People putting on makeup, maybe they're eating on the way to work, or they're just not paying attention.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation just before we started here where people get close to home. And you're so used to being close to home, you're almost on autopilot. Whether you're leaving and you're on autopilot because you're so used to that intersection or you're used to that roadway, always make yourself aware when you're driving. It is so important that, once again, I'll say it 100 times, but just drive. That's all you should be concentrating on, and making sure that you and your loved ones and others that you share the road with are making to their destination safely. That's what our goal is.
Fall's coming, watch for deer, watch for...
Yes, so that's another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever you use your high beams when you're traveling outside in the county, lower your high beams whenever you approach an oncoming vehicle. But use caution, pay attention to the scan. That's another thing that we teach, is to scan the ditches to make sure, if you're seeing the wildlife out there, be cautious of that. And adjust your speed. If you are only drive for what you're comfortable with. Right. That's another a big one. And you mentioned overtaking other cars, passing. Make sure that you're paying attention to the no passing zones, and make sure that you are following the law. But also, it's for the safety of the other drivers on the roadway and yourself. If it's not safe to pass, don't pass. Don't pass on bridges. Don't pass on approaching an intersection. On hills, things like that. So. It's mainly, we're all human, and humans are okay. We can make mistakes, and that is fine. But if you can take an extra step to prevent those mistakes, you could save your life or save others.
Well, Branden, thank you very much for everything you guys are doing at the Sheriff's Department. Commissioner Wise and I have worked with Public Works, and we intend to have a study done at the state where they can do a traffic study on K-42 so that we can get better data and help us make future decisions on the highway. So thank you very much, everybody, and please drive safely.